high hopes in the rain. Sitting in a chair in the living room, Dave wonders, I know that I have to do something drastic, or nothing will change in our relationship. But what can that be? I was foolish and selfish. I am aware of that now. How do I undo it? He walks to the window and looks out, as if the act would give him an answer. As he scans the surroundings, he sees that it is raining. It is what his grandfather would have called a doozy of a storm. Then he gets an idea. He decides to follow it through, though it might just be foolish to the max. But he feels that it has to be tried. It is desperation time. He goes into the bedroom and puts on what is well known to friends and family to be his favorite sweater, blue with a big maple leaf on the front. Then he goes outside, getting soaked in mere seconds. He thinks once more about the foolish thing that he did slightly more than a week ago. At the very least, this will be yet another punishment, one that he is imposing on himself, one that he feels he deserves. But his hope is that it will change the failing state of his marriage, the event that harmed his marriage. It was a Saturday night, and as usual for this time of year, he was watching a hockey game in which his beloved Toronto Maple Leafs were playing. It was the third period, and the game was tied 3-3. The Leafs had been behind, but had made a comeback to tie the game. Their opposition, the New York Rangers, had just received a tripping penalty. The phone rang, and he wondered whether or not to answer it. But he could still watch the game while listening on his phone. It was his wife, Eva. She had been out to watch a movie with her best friends. They lived on the other side of town, so they were taking a bus to go back home. For her, there was an hour-long walk. There was no bus that would take her home. She did not feel like walking, as it had been a long day for her. And there were some thick clouds approaching where she was standing. She asked Dave to pick her up at the theater so that she would not have to walk home. His reply was definitely not what she wanted to hear. He told her that he was watching the Leaf game, and it was tied in the third period, with the Rangers just getting a penalty. He could not possibly abandon the game at this stage. She was stunned by his response and ended the call on the phone. She did so with anger and energy, banging her phone on her upper leg. Both of them knew that there was no bus that went near to their home. When she went to call a taxi cab, she discovered that her phone was no longer working. She would have to walk. And as she did, the expected rainfall began. Very heavy it was. By the time she reached home, she was completely drenched and very, very angry with her husband. Her first words to him, when she finally arrived at their home, was, "I think that you prefer your beloved Leafs to me. I hope that they lost." He was going to say that they won 4-3, something that he had jumped up and cheered about at the time, but was astute enough not to do so. When he looked at her drenched person and angry face, he knew that he was in deep trouble. The next day, which was Sunday, they barely spoke to each other. And when dinner time rolled around, and he asked her whether they might go out to have dinner in a local place that they both liked, her only reply was, "I guess there was no Leafs game tonight, or you would not have asked me. I'm making my own dinner tonight, and you can make your own damn dinner." Over the next few days, there was little said between them, other than the bare necessities, barked out in very short sentences. This is what had led him to the desperate gesture of going out in the rain while wearing his maple leaf sweater. He knew that she would soon to be in the living room as her favorite television show was on. The television had its back to the window, through which the front yard could be seen. She came into the room and turned on the television. Dave felt that she would eventually be seeing him and his soaking wet treasure. A few minutes passed by, and she did not appear to see him, so he walked towards the window until he was only a step away. He wanted to knock on the window, but decided against it. After about 10 minutes, she stood up. He reckoned that there was a commercial on, and that she was going to the kitchen to get something to eat or drink. He had heated up a frozen pizza for his own supper, and had eaten it alone, as he had done every night since the Saturday of her drenching. When she returned to the living room, a glass of wine in her hand, she suddenly saw him, wet sweater and all. She put the glass down and walked towards the window. Knowing him well after 5 years of marriage, she recognized one of his symbolic gestures. The fact that he had worn his leaf sweater while out in the rain had meaning that she clearly understood. She went quickly to the front door, opened it, and in a friendlier manner than she had used in speaking to him in days, she shouted out to him, "Come in right now, you moron," an affectionate term shared between them. When he came inside, she said to him, "I would hug you, you moron, but I don't want to get wet. Take the sweater off so I can put it in the dryer, and put something dry on." He stripped off the soaking garment and handed it to her. She grabbed it and took it downstairs to the dryer. He stood there, half naked, with a big smile on his face. When she returned to the living room, she returned his smile with a smile of her own. He then said, "I was selfish on Saturday. I am so sorry about that. You are way more important to me than a hockey team could ever be. You are in first place. They are a distant second." This was followed by a mutually engaging hug. "Mother, dearest. Annie, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot about this weekend. I'm really unwell, so I probably couldn't have made it anyway. If you can wait, I'll help you next weekend. I promise. Love you, XXX. My heart sank. Sarah was unreliable, and she does this all the time. But I really thought she'd come through this time. I suppose I thought that every time, but this time I was hoping it would be different. I knew deep down that our friendship was slipping away. We both led totally different lives, but I felt it would be quite a shame to let a near 20-year friendship fade into nothing. It was clear where she stood on it, however, as she was putting less and less effort into her lies. Next weekend would turn into next month, and next month would turn into after Christmas. By the time we got round to it, when she had a weekend where she had nothing else to do, my Gran's old house would be commandeered by rats, bugs, and all manner of weeds. It was now going to be a long, lonely 3-hour drive across the country to Newbiggin, and an even lonelier weekend clearing out the house. Part of the reason I'd wanted her to come was that I didn't want to stay there overnight on my own. It was the creepiest place I'd ever been. Every summer up until I turned 14, I was forced to spend 2 weeks there while my parents flew off to some tropical destination for a break. It wasn't until I disappeared the night before I was due to be dropped off that my parents took my complaints seriously. I left them a ransom note stating that I was not in trouble and that I was safe at a friend's house. I informed them that I would return home the next morning at 11, an hour before they were due to leave for the airport. When I returned the following morning, at exactly 11 a.m., my mother was already sat in the passenger seat of the car. As I walked up the drive, my father came out of the front door to meet me. He handed me the house key and an envelope, and looked at me with sly grin. Your mother is upset, as you can see. She wants to leave early. He put his hand on my shoulder. I know you hate going to your Gran's. Quite frankly, I don't blame you. But you're on your own for 2 weeks now, kid. You've got the key. There's 200 quid in there, and that has to last you until we get back. If you starve, then that's on you. And no parties, or I will personally deliver you to your Gran's house and leave you there for a month. He hugged me and kissed me on the head, then got in the car. My mother didn't look at me as they backed off the drive. After a few hours of flicking between podcasts and the radio, I pulled onto the narrow country road that led to the house. It hadn't rained for a few days, but somehow the road was thick with wet mud, and the many potholes that lined it were filled with brown water. I drove carefully along for about 15 minutes until I rounded the last bend and saw the small tree that stretched over the low stone wall of the front garden. As I drove up the driveway, I had to fight every fiber of my being to not reverse out of there and leave the bloody house to rot. Why was I even here? Through some weird sense of loyalty to my mother, a woman that only saw her own mother through proxy like some old billionaire that can't be bothered to attend board meetings. She had always refused to go to my grand's house, and also refused to explain to me why. She left as soon as she was able and moved to the nearest city. Soon after, she met my father, and the rest is history. As far as I could remember, the only time she has been back since was to see my grandfather on his deathbed. Even then, she refused to stay over. I got out of the car and tip-toed my way around more potholes to the large red front door. I pulled out the large brass key I was sent by the lawyers and opened it. It was made from a thick slab of heavy wood. I had to use my shoulder and put all of my weight into it to push it open. Once inside, I struggled to see anything. Dusk was arriving outside, and the windows were so thick with grime that the little daylight that was left was barely getting through. I pulled out my key ring and turned on my small travel torch when something to the right of me caught the corner of my eye. Something moved. I know it did. The painting above the radiator moved its head. I swear it did. But it couldn't have. Obviously. It's a painting. My hand were tingling, and my heart felt like it was climbing a hill in a spin class. I kept the torch shining on the painting and took a few deep breaths, holding for 4 seconds and then exhaling. The painting did not move Annie. I made my way down the hallway to the main room. I retraced my childhood steps towards the large lamp in the corner of the room. I would sneak down here in the middle of the night and read all of my grandfather's old books. The only thing I actually wanted from this clear-out was his original copy of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I would read it every summer. It was the only thing I looked forward to. I found the lamp. I fumbled around with the switch, as my hands were still sweaty. When I eventually got it on, my heart sank. The bookshelf was empty. There is very little dust on the shelves, which means it was recently cleared. As far as I was told, I had the only key, so either I was being lied to or someone had broken in. My only hope was that they were in the cupboard at the bottom. I looked in with my pocket torch and was met with spider webs. I made to stand up, but something stopped me in my tracks. I froze to the spot. My eyes widened to the point where I thought they might fall out. I held my breath. Silence surrounded me until I heard it again. It pierced through my chest. I wanted to scream, to heave open the huge door and leave without looking back. But something kept me there. I slowly turned around. I tried to silently creep through the room, over to the bottom of the large wooden staircase in the middle of the grand hallway. But with every step came a creak from the ancient floorboards. Each creak of the floorboards seemed to reverberate up my spine. My head was fizzing. I reached the entrance back into the hallway and I could still hear the laugh. It was coming from upstairs. I was drenched with sweat. I could almost feel the drops leaving my pores. My cortisol levels must have been breaking all sorts of records. This is insane. Why am I going up the stairs? At the top of the stairs, the main bedroom and the bathroom were to the right. On the left was my mother's old bedroom, the bedroom that I inherited during those dreaded summers. I waited at the top and held my breath, listening for the laughter. If this was all a game by some silly country kids, they would be lucky to leave with all of their fingers. After a few seconds, I heard it. It was coming from my mother's old room. Enough sneaking about, I leapt up the final stair and burst into the room. Empty. I listened again, but the laughter had stopped. I shone the torch around the room. I had to take a second to think back, to make sure I was remembering things right, as the room looked totally different to the last time I was here. It had been turned into a shrine for my mother. There was pictures of her everywhere, some with her parents, some with my father. There was one of her holding me as a newborn, some with her and friends. All of her old toys were dotted around the room on shelves and drawers. Old medals and school certificates were stuck to the walls. I didn't understand. Why would my grandmother do this? My mother always told me she was cold and distant, never showed any real affection. I always believed her, as that was exactly how she was with me. This made no sense, but who else would do it if it wasn't her? I picked up a photo of my mother as a baby. I looked exactly like her at that age. I almost had time to form a smile before being shocked so much. I dropped the picture and smashed the glass. Bright lights were flashing in through the window, almost as if someone was speaking Morse code. I made my way over to the window and saw that the light was coming from the headlights of my car. Shit. I must have left them on. I hope the battery isn't going flat. I rummaged around in my pockets for my keys until I realized I had them in my hand as I was using the pocket torch I made to turn around, when I felt an ice-cold hand grip the back of my neck. I swung my arm around violently, elbow first, hoping to connect hard with whoever had grabbed me. I didn't connect, so I swung my arms around, hoping to land any sort of blow, just enough for me to create some space and get out. I swung and kicked, but hit nothing. There was no one there. I shook my head and repeated the same breathing exercises as I had performed in front of the painting downstairs before walking over to the door. I need to leave now. And I do mean now. Don't leave me, Annie. My fingers froze around the door handle as if it was covered in super glue. Please don't leave me, Annie. Stay here and play with me. I shone the torch up to where I heard the voice. I tried to scream. I had to scream. if I didn't scream, my head was going to explode. My mother was sat up in her bed, clutching her childhood doll. "Don't go out there. If you go out there, you'll die. I don't want you to die, Annie. I want you to stay here with me forever." The scream finally left me. It left me with more force than anything I have ever felt in my life. The whole room seemed to shake. I screamed until every last breath had left my lungs. Then I threw open the door so hard it almost came off. Its hinges. I sprinted down the stairs, jumping down the last 4. I reached the front door. I hadn't locked it when I'd came in, so I twisted the large brass handle and pulled. I couldn't use my weight to push it open this time, so I opened it as far as I could, then squeezed my fingers into the opening so I could have a better grip on the door to pull. I heard the laughter again. It was getting louder, which meant it was getting closer. "Annie, don't be silly. You'll die out there. Stay with me." I pulled and pulled. I eventually put my foot in the gap and pushed the door back with my heel. Once there was enough space, I squeezed through, then sprinted over to my car, swinging the door open, then diving in. I turned the key once, twice. On the 3rd time it worked. I put it into gear, ripped the handbrake down, span around, and drove straight through the closed gate. The casualty has been identified as Annie Jones after her car skidded off a country road and collided head-on with a tree. The incident is made even more tragic, as she had been driving back home after visiting her late grandmother's house to deal with her estate due to the tragic deaths of her mother and father the previous year. Our thoughts go out to her close friends and family at the unfortunate time. Mine Cole didn't know if he was asleep or awake until he heard someone cough. Then began the incessant striking of hammer on stone. Earl, the foreman, had set up shifts for everyone. He'd said, "Keep pounding. Let them know we're still here. Alive." There was no light. None. Not a glimmer. Everything felt dreamlike. Only Cole's dreams felt real. They played out in daylight. How long since the cave-in? Time had lost meaning. It felt like forever, or an hour ago. He'd startle awake and wonder where he was, then remember, how long had he slept? A few minutes? Days? His watch was accurate. Give or take 12 hours. Memories blended with reality. Hunger marked times passing, rolling against gritty stone. He sat up. Hearing others move reminded him there were others. And so far, they had survived. At least the dust had settled. After the collapse, choking dust hung in the air forever. They thought their lungs would never clear. For a long time, whenever someone switched on their lantern, everything looked smoky. Eventually, their coughing stopped. Had it been Dietz? Earl knew, but didn't want them focusing on that. He'd spent his life in the mines, If anyone asked, Earl would tell them he cut his teeth on a chunk of coal. After the cave-in, he told himself, this is the end. I get out alive. I'm gone. After the initial shock, they could only wait and hope a rescue party would find them before. When the tunnel collapsed, so much happened at once. The screams, the groans, the terror, the chaos. They would all have died had Earl not kept them focused. After a few rushed to escape and got caught in the collapse, his shouted orders stopped the panic. They heard their screams, but could do nothing. There wasn't time. Their equipment was inadequate, couldn't save themselves. The silence that followed gave them chills. The survivors pulled Jed from the rubble. He couldn't walk. They cleared a level spot for him. Using his medical training, Earl directed the others. He stopped Jed's bleeding. But setting broken bones with improvised splints was painful and difficult. They gave him precious water, Earl said. Hope he gets professional help before they set. He knew they would need to re-break them once he got to a hospital. Reality settled. Rescue could take days, might never get out. The prospect of starvation loomed. Earl counted heads. Besides himself, 4 others survived. Sonny, Jed, Cole, and Roman. All but Sonny had grown up together. Their fathers all came from the mines. The collapse came in the morning, so they had food and water. Stow your kits and gear, he said. Once you're secured, douse your lanterns. Save the batteries. The guys were hungry. Earl said, husband your resources, guys. Don't gobble it all at once. Make it last. Maybe down here a while. Earl organized shifts for them. They were to strike stone with a hammer in the Morse code SOS distress signal. Earl handed Cole a pick and pointed to the wall. You start. Someone'll spell you in an hour. Signal 'em that we're alive and waiting. Cole found comfort at the wall. Activity filled the time. He felt useful. It amazed him how things become routine, even in the most primitive circumstances. While each took their turn at the wall, the others sat together in the dark, sharing stories. Sometimes they even laughed in the face of their plight. After a while, Roman began to weep. Hearing his sobs in the dark unsettled the others. A giant of a man. Everyone saw him as stoic, a man of action. He would take on any task. No one expected blubbering about his wife and kids. Now, he despaired. In the darkness, his mask of strength invisible, he revealed himself. Their situation was undeniable. At the wall with the SOS, Cole tried to drown out Roman's sobs. Roman couldn't stifle his tears. His sobs became wails. Earl said, I know it looks bad, man, but you'll be home in a day or two. With a constricted voice, Roman tried to explain. She counts on me. What'll May do if I'm not there for her? She worries. Says, be sure to come home. What can I do without you? Says the kids cry when I'm late. There was nothing to say. Roman's sobs subsided into labored breathing. It was impossible, but the darkness seemed even blacker. Lacking sight, their sense of hearing sharpened. Each man recognized the personal signature of anyone's slight movement. The darkness did not obscure anyone's location. Hours passed. They drifted in and out of consciousness until their turn to hammer. The SOS came. Anyone have any extra? I'm starving. It was Cole. No one responded. Earl said, Told you not to wolf, man. Come on, guys. Someone must have something. You know I'd share with you. Cole turned on his lamp. He stood over Sonny. I knew it. A stream of profanity flooded out. Others leaped to restrain him. Sonny said, It's mine, man. I didn't take yours. You're hoarding, man. That food belongs to everyone. Earl stepped up, and Cole calmed. What's up, Sonny? Whose kits are those? Sonny said, No one's hammering. Whose shift is it? They're gonna think we're dead. Answer the question. I found 'em, Earl. Didn't steal 'em. Left behind by the others? Yeah, Sam and Gordy. The others who booked. They won't be back. I took them for safekeeping. Everyone looked at him in silence. Finally, he handed a kit to Cole. Earl said, Roman, do an inventory on everyone's victuals. Make sure there's an even distribution. That seemed to satisfy everyone. Earl said, Who's on SOS? Gotta keep the signal up. Don't want them giving up the search. Roman said, I'm up. You keep doing inventory. Sonny, get to it. Things settled after that. Everyone took their turn on SOS. There was less conversation. Everyone kept to themselves. They never knew if their signals were heard. The overhead rumblings of excavation paused. When it resumed, it seemed more distant. Cole asked Earl, They know where we are. What's taking so long? They quitting? The cave-in exposed unstable strata. Aggressive digging could loosen it, bring it all down. Don't want to lose us to their haste. That's why they don't blast? Right. They could only keep signaling. And hope. Hours passed. Their existence settled into a narrow routine. Those not hammering the wall slept or booed fitfully, kept awake by Jed's groans. Everyone knew he was still alive. No one knew when Jed would scream. Ghosts tormented him. Earl tried to calm him, but there was nothing to give him. Everyone put up with it. Had days passed? Cole awoke from unsettled sleep. He tipped his canteen up and found it empty. He said, When we're back up top, if I ever suggest going camping, somebody please kill me. Others laughed. Sonny said, We're already dead. Just don't know it yet. Earl said, Shut up. Don't start that. Sonny said, It's true. We'll never get out. All that's left is arranging ourselves for the grave we're already resting in. Roman said, They're searching. Need to be patient. Sonny said, Give it up. You know I'm right. Earl said, You're not helping. Whining does nothing. I'll whine if I want. You gonna kill me? I'm already dead, Cole said. When they pull me out of here, I'll tell them to leave you behind. that you gave up, cried until you died. They heard a clatter of rocks. A punch glanced off Cole's face. If Sonny had seen his target, it would have hurt more. Screaming with rage, Cole threw himself at his attacker. They fell into the rubble. Earl yelled, "Stop!" They threw punches and grappled. Their thrashing sounded like animals. Earl switched on his lantern. He stood over the two. Sonny had bloodied Cole's face. Earl kicked Sonny's head, sending him to the cave floor. Sonny yelled, "I'll kill you!" "Listen!" Roman stopped hammering. Earl doused his light. The sound of pneumatic drills was close. Brakes led to increased activity. Everyone stepped back from the rubble, blocking the tunnel opening. Dust stirred, making them cough. Stones shifted and rolled to their feet. Cole and Roman dodged a boulder coming to rest between them. They laughed nervously. After several minutes of tense silence, light pierced the darkness. The five cheered as one. Even Jed joined in. Shouting and jumping, they couldn't stop. A large stone broke free and rolled from the tunnel entrance, bathing the cavern in light. They'd been, say it, on loop. Maverick Kotzen, 12/27/24, on loop. It was less than an hour after my surgery that I realized I would never be able to forgive my surgeon. Merely a week prior, I had walked into my surgeon's office to go over the final details leading up to the procedure, what to eat and drink beforehand, what to not do, and a reiteration of the risks in order to confirm that I really wanted the procedure. Ever since I had fallen off a rock swing and slammed my elbow into a rock, my right arm hadn't been able to move or even bend, leading me to be effectively half as useful as I used to be. The choice to get a full reconstruction of my elbow was not an easy one. The way it had broken, there were far less invasive and safer procedures that were available to me. I was hesitant, but my surgeon took my hand, assured me that it was the best course of action, and said, "It's going to be okay." 3 days before the procedure, my anxiety had only worsened, and my partner had done the best they could to comfort me. They told me that the risks were still low, and that this procedure would return to me the full mobility I had before my life was turned upside down. Friends had reached out, comforting me and wishing me a speedy recovery, as if I had already gone through with the operation. It felt as if I had already been altered, physically and personally, by the procedure, despite not even having the surgery yet. Even my dog knew something was off, as he wagged his tail and snuggled up next to me every night in my bed, instead of sleeping in his dog bed like he always does. It felt like the natural rhythm of my life had been disrupted, and that nothing would ever feel the same way it did. I began to fantasize and romanticize my life before the accident, as if it had been the peak of existence. This, of course, glosses over the struggles I was having earlier that year to pay rent, repair my relationship with my parents, and help a friend through an accidental pregnancy. Through the storm of thoughts, I clutched desperately to the mast of the boat, repeating as the next big wave came to hit me, "It's going to be okay." 2 days before the procedure, the anxiety had not improved, and it was visible on my partner's face that they were clearly worried about me. My despondency when I was asked questions, my inattentiveness when attempting tasks with one arm, and even my lack of appetite were just a few of the worrying symptoms that were beginning to present themselves en masse. Behind my back, my partner was contacting my friends, trying to coordinate some kind of effort to boost my mood, all while I more or less lay in my bed all day, watching daytime television and periodically getting up to use the restroom. In between naps and TV fever dreams, I had flashbacks to all of the warnings from friends and family about the procedure. Are you sure you want to do this? What if you never fully recover? I don't know about this operation. Isn't there a considerable chance they screw up and just have to amputate your arm? I fully support you and your decision, but I want to make sure you've thought it through. These criticisms, at the time, seriously made me reconsider my decision. Ultimately, I decided to stay the course, but the decision to go against the better advice of my friends felt wrong even at the time. The weird and odd feeling of regret that washed over me every time I reassured them and told them I was going through with it only amplified the more people I talked to. Whenever I talked to anyone who knew me, the surgery would sooner or later come up, and I would have to wait during conversation until that dreaded moment came. My friends were with me, surgery or no, but the storm upon which my boat had been sailing only seemed to intensify, as big wave after big wave nearly broke my ship in two. Still clutching onto that mast of hope, as thoughts flowed freely in and out of my mind as I lay awake at midnight. It's going to be okay. 24 hours out from the procedure, my anxiety had completely paralyzed me. Even the most basic tasks, like brushing my teeth or going to the bathroom, felt like Herculean tasks that required tremendous effort. I turned off my phone at that point in order to calm my nerves, and had even sworn off television for the day. I just sat in my bed and read some of my favorite books, periodically taking breaks to stare out of the window. The surgery loomed like a dark cloud above my head, ready to rain over my head at any given moment and take full control of my consciousness. It dawned on me at that moment that this procedure, the one I had defended from friends and fought so hard to have, had largely come to define me as a person. At the very least, I had let it define me in many ways. Reflecting on my thoughts at the time, I am now able to see how completely enveloped I had been. Irony, though cruel. For it seemed that despite the fact that my elbow was about to be repaired, a part of me had been damaged in the process. Sure, I was to be fixed physically, but mentally, my anxiety and nervousness had never been higher. As I went to bed that night, the last thought I can remember is a gentle acceptance as the day of the surgery fast approached, and a comforting line, "It's going to be okay." On the morning of the surgery, my surgery, I was woken by my partner early in the morning. They gave me my water bottle, my clothes, and opened the door for me to get into the passenger seat of our car at a bright and sunny 4 a.m. By the time I got to the hospital, all events began to blend together. The reception, the being shown to the bed, and the surgeon's explanation of the preoperative all seemed like a free-flowing dream. The last memory I have right before going under anesthesia is of my partner holding my hand, whispering in a soft, reassuring tone, "It's going to be okay." As I would soon find out, it was not going to be okay. Based on the beginning of my story, you can guess how well my procedure went. 3 hours into the reconstruction of my elbow, a complication caused internal bleeding all throughout my arm. With no ability to stop it, they ended up having to amputate my arm from the elbow down. Upon waking, I felt phantom pain almost immediately, and would continue to feel that way for days after. My surgeon came into the room shortly after I awoke and tried consoling me. There was nothing I could have done. These things just happen sometimes. I'm sorry. Did any of his words even matter? I had held his words dear for so long, and for them to ring hollow in my moment of utmost need was one of the most depressing situations I have ever been in. My partner, in between crying sessions, attempted to reassure me. I heard him begin to say, "Don't worry, no matter what, it's going to be." Memory of the future. Ed is looking down the cliff, watching the waves crashing on the beach, same place he was when his baby brother went missing. His parents never spoke of it, like he never had a sibling. It is a summer night. Goes inside for dinner. No one says a word, same as usual. Ed does the dishes. His dad buries himself on the couch in front of the TV, and Mom goes to her room. Another boring evening at the Wallaces. Maybe all the answers to all of our questions are out there in the dark forest. Ed pushes aside a twig from a tree with his left hand to look ahead. It is so dark. He knows he is naked. Why would he? He wonders. It is freezing. Now he is elsewhere, in front of a shed. On the other side, he simply knows there are 3 beings, which could passed off as triplets, all looking the same, except the one in the middle seems to be a female. They are facing the wall that takes to the woods. Their oval heads are almost a triangle, with a pointy chin. the nipples of the both males have a pyramidal shape. The females are round. The three of them appear to be wearing a silvery overall, orange latex gloves up to their elbows, some work boots. Only those aren't brown or black, but in the same silvery tone. Or are they? Their actual feet. They got only 2 toes, the eyes completely white, no pupils or lids, and pointy ears, like they were elves from a fairy tale. They seem to albinos, the skin so white. They are staring at Ed like the shed was gone. He can also see them clearly. The walls appear invisible. Ed doesn't know what to do. No matter, though, because he suddenly realizes even if he wanted to move or scream or run, he couldn't. They wouldn't let him. Ed is back in bed. Was it a dream? Whatever it was, he can tell inside that shed there was a time machine. A young boy went there every night to build it, so he could get back the girl that ditched him. He was too. A lone one. Ed goes to school like it's any other day. Does not pay attention in classes. He looks out the window and sees the boy that built the time machine. He is a mysterious one, skipping stones at some lake. Back home, Ed is sitting on the grass, next to the cliff, still with those 3 beings on his mind. He wonders who they were and where. Where did they come from? And why? What could they possibly want with him? Ed takes a shower, same as every afternoon. After he is done with his homework, and before they have dinner, he is finished cleaning up, and water is running down his body. He goes to open the curtain to get out, but he opens some kind of vortex. He can see a galaxy light years away. In the middle, a throne with a Nordic woman with her child in her arms. As soon as he looks into the woman's eyes, he's back in his bathroom, all silent at the table. Barely looks at his plate during dinner, let alone touching his food. His parents eat and leave, as usual. His thoughts still on that woman, and the throne, and those 3 beings he saw the other night. Once on his bed, pulls the sheets up to cover his body, and something gets his attention. There is a huge man on the corner, both hands hugging his knees, showing some concern on his face. Wearing a robe and sandals, must be at least 13 feet tall. Turns around and looks into Ed's eyes. Ed wonders what troubles the giant. The boy that built the time machine pops into both their heads, or into the man's, but Ed can see it clearly, as if he himself was seeing the boy, carrying a box with tools, walking to the shed every night. He must have really loved that girl. Ed is certain he wasn't dreaming when he saw the giant, and neither is he now. The boy has been going to the cemetery in the middle of the night for several weeks, desecrating more than a few graves. Now he's put together a body from parts of some of the corpses he's dug up, and next to the body, he's put a photo of the girl who left him. in the hopes that some part of her essence will enter the empty vessel. As some modern Frankenstein, he intends to give life to the body by means of electricity. Ed sees himself pulling the lever, but before he can find out if it worked, if the body is alive, he appears to jump through time. Now Ed is in 1978, June 6th, almost the 7th, as he looks at his watch and it's 11:50 p.m. The date he sees in a page of a journal flying by, carried out by the wind. He is in a city destroyed by a nuclear war, which never happened. Not in this reality, anyway. Ed sees the boy jumping through time and space once again. What was once a bouquet of flowers rests next to a long forgotten grave. That is all we can expect in life. When we go, our loved ones will mourn us and cry for some time, recalling memories with us, but not too long. They learn to move on and leave us behind, to forget. Ed just knows the boy was never born, not in this reality. The boy just wanted peace and kept himself from being born. There is no grave, no tomb, no resting place for the boy. He is now at peace, wherever he may be. From out of nowhere, a girl appears. As white as snow her skin is, dark as ebony her long hair. There is no exit for her. She's on the edge of the precipice, a man getting closer. No options left. To live or to be free, that's the end of the road for the girl. She jumps to her own demise, feeling like she cab fly for a few seconds, and then the sea. She turns into sea foam. She appears to be floating on the ocean, feeling but peace and quiet. Another man comes into the scene. He was on the beach and comes to the girl. He looks into her blue eyes. Suddenly, it is Ed looking into those eyes, and then it's the firmament and the cold space. It starts raining, and Ed can see the drops falling to floor, and the tombs, the cemetery again. The abandoned and long-forgotten grave's tombstone reads, Carola Duval. Was it all a dream? Is Ed wondering when he starts an astral travel? Feels himself leaving his body, only it's not him, but a boy he's seen before. Somewhere in dreams, perhaps. Ed sees the boy getting back in his body as three tall beings with elephant-like skin stand next to him. Those beings have rat-gray skin, huge black eyes, no iris or retina, just pupil, no nose, no mouth, oval heads. The boy covers his head with the sheets, hoping they will leave soon. Now Ed finds himself in his own room, his head covered, those beings next to him. Through the sheets, he can see blue lights and begins floating above his bed. And now he is the one hoping they leave. Ed wakes up a little dizzy and having no idea what that all was. When did they leave? Did they do something to him? He takes a shower, gets downstairs, and grabs a glass with orange juice and goes to school. Again, he pays no attention to his class or classmates. During lunch, sitting with his friends, they are all laughing and talking, and he's just gone. He remembers when the last pandemic happened. He dreamed of a guy meeting 3 shadowy figures. Never gave it much thought, but now he wonders if that was a dream at all. And is it somehow related to what he's been seeing in dreams? "Are you here?" asks his mom, when once again he hasn't touched his food. He's playing with his fork and some peas. He found himself staring at a girl in some Greek ruins. Ed goes to bed early. He is staring at the ceiling, not thinking of anything. He doesn't even notice when he falls asleep. Or is he? Through the corner of his right eye, he sees 3 green-skinned beings, 4 feet tall, tops. They were there a second before. Now, they're gone. It is 3:15 a.m. And he falls asleep once more. He is just a child, 4, 5 years old, playing in the park, his mom holding his baby brother's hand. Now his mom goes to the ice cream truck while he watches his brother. It is now late and dark, all 3 of them walking home. His dad is there, waiting for them, and those 3 eye beings in front of them, his baby brother, they take with them. And his parents never talked about him again, like he never existed. He didn't exist, not in this reality anyway. The female being speaks, or rather, prints it on Ed's mind. They do not move their mouths. "Your brother has a bigger fate," speaks the being on the left. "How can you?" asks Ed inside his head. "We can see your thoughts," says the being on the right. "And you can see ours," adds the one on the left. "You had no sibling in this life. That's a memory of another reality," said the female. "And now he's here again, looking down the cliff, watching the waves crashing on the beach. Same place he was when his baby brother went missing. Or at least, that's what Ed would remember.